right. Good morning, everyone. This is your host, Gemma Putty, bringing holistic conversations from North Idaho and across this region. I'm so excited to chat with the entrepreneurs, creatives, and believers as we journey together to connect more deeply to ourselves, our earth, and our communities. So today, for interview number 3, I'm talking with Kendra Booths. She owns, with her husband and 3 children, a small family farm in Post Falls, Idaho. They specialize in old-fashioned and heirloom flowers from zinnias, dahlias, larkspur, sunflowers, poppies, pansies, snapdragons, and so much more. Even at the farmer's market yesterday, she had one that was called a flamingo feather, which was amazing. So they really believe that the best quality blooms come from healthy soil. So they don't use pesticides or fungicides on their land as they follow organic growing practices. They take pride in their approach to ethical farming to provide a habitat for beneficial insects, a playground for their children, and a backdrop of beauty for their lives. So welcome, Kendra. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I just love your backdrop. Like I said before, I'm like, you're the picture of a flower farmer, which is so great. And I love that it's become this thing now in the farmers market that there's multiple flower farmers. And when I started to talk to you, when I first met you at the Kootenai County Farmers Market, I mean, was pretty clueless about it. I still am, which is why I'm excited to dive into this conversation more so you can help really spread the message of why it's important to get your flowers local and use organic versus going to the grocery store. So I want to start though with just a little bit about your journey, because I mean, that's part of my passion too, is really finding who we are and chasing those dreams and that intuition. So if you want to start a little bit just talking about your background and how you got to Post Falls, Idaho with a flower farm.
Sure thing. So I am one of those California transplants. There are a bunch of them here. So I was living actually in Southern California in the San Fernando Valley. I had grown up there. To me, it was, you know, very much a small town, sort of in the middle of a big city, and I loved it. I mean, I met my husband, who's originally from Spokane, and we, with my parents, owned an insurance agency. So I was really submerged in the corporate world. I was an agent for big insurance companies like Safeco and Mercury and all of that. And I moved from personal insurance, doing auto and home, into management positions, into doing the commercial insurance and talking to business owners and things like that. But it was a really family, community-centered business, and it really kind of gave me the warm and fuzzies. I'm one of those people that's really driven by responsibility, so having this, you know, familial sort of thing was really important to me, but it was really hard. And as I, you know, my life started to change and I had children, priorities started to shift and my environment started to change. It didn't feel as much like a small community anymore. It felt a lot more plastic. I mean, there's a lot of celebrity culture there that's really different now, and a lot of just different. It just different than what I thought for my life or what I wanted for my life. But I was very successful doing, you know, this job, and I came up to Hayden Lake for the summers, and that's what I thought I would get. And I really became intoxicated with this place and this environment and this backdrop. So I thought, oh, you know, well, maybe we'll get a lake cabin one day and get to spend 2 weeks out of the year there or whatever, because this insurance job is this insurance job. But then it just became harder and harder to staff the place, harder to manage the people. My parents wanted to retire, and so we sold it.
Right.
And when I started to work for someone else's family, it just didn't feel right anymore. It felt like, you know, I was doing a lot, I was working really hard, but I was not passionate about what I was doing. I didn't have that responsibility driving me anymore to be like part of my family, and I just really changed. And so I started to just think about other things, and funny enough, I had an experience with buttermilk, which was a life changer.
Okay.
And you cannot in the grocery store in the San Fernando Valley or in any part of Los Angeles find whole milk buttermilk. I mean, you might be able to now, but my mom moved to the South, and when you go to the regular grocery store, you can find whole milk buttermilk.
Okay.
So I started to ask them questions like, what's buttermilk? Why can't I find whole milk buttermilk? Like, what's happening? So I started to learn that there was a lot that I didn't know. A lot about just producing food, choices that supermarkets make for what's available to you, you know, some of the journeys that your fruit and vegetable goes on before it gets to you. Just sort of my eyes started to open up a little bit. Like, I don't even know if I knew that there was a blue egg, that a chicken could lay a blue egg. Like I now, like, I don't know. So I started to become really obsessed with this idea of a homestead, right? Having a homestead. And I think my family, not my husband, but my sister and my dad, they thought I was crazy. I literally think they thought I was having a nervous breakdown. And as a joke, my husband got me some books for Christmas, which they have for you. Raising Chickens and Bunnies.
Yes.
Backyard homestead book here. So I started to read those books and just think like, oh my God, I want this different life. I want a pig, I want a horse, I want a cow, you know, and I want to figure out how to live off the land. But you know, how is that possible? My house in Studio City was on a 5,800 square foot lot. I mean, this tiny patch of lot where maybe my kids could do like a quick circle with their bikes in the driveway if they were lucky.
Right.
We came up here one summer. I had my eyes on this farmhouse and I just thought, you know, maybe it'll all work out and there'll be, you know, a guided path for me. And the day we got here was the day I found out that that place sold. So I was like, oh, bubble bursted, you know, it's not my time.
Right.
So we started to look around a little bit here, and the day or two before we left, the place that we're in now was put on the market, and it was just like the stars aligned, and it was like a moment where it was like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's all coming together. So we found this little, just under 5 acres in Post Falls, and it has a lot of outbuildings. It's got a little barn, you know, and everything. And so it really fit my needs, or what I thought, you know, I wanted, but I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, you know, with the land. And previous to this, my family, my mom's family, they are farmers. My uncle and my grandfather were hay farmers in the Imperial Valley in California. And I was talking to my uncle one day, and he said, you know, if I had one more in me, I would grow flowers. Ooh. And until he said that, I had never really thought about like flowers as a crop that you grow, like lettuce. And I never thought about flower farmers or what that looked like or what that meant. So I Googled it, of course. And when I Googled it, I found Floret, which is kind of this this family flower farm in Washington.
Right.
And she's kind of like the guru of the flower farm. She runs a workshop and she has seeds, and it's just a really inspiring person. And so I started to look at her and think like, oh my God, that's something that's possible. You know, you could change this and have little market booths and have this life that could be different. It could be smaller. It could be more rewarding in the way that I was looking for the reward. Right. And so we pulled the trigger, we got the house, we moved, and now
I love it though, because I mean, you look back on that journey, and I mean, things started to kind of unalign in California for you when you're like, look, this business isn't making sense anymore. It was fulfilling at one point and for one chapter, and then things started to shift, but then all of these like little points started to fall in of like guides, if you will, if you think that way of, right? Even from the flower farmer comment, where something just, and it obviously resonated with you.
Absolutely. Right? And yeah, so in that way, I feel really, it sounds, you know, like, I guess self-gratifying, but I'm inspired by my own journey because I did it. Like, I actually did it. Like, and I think part of what keeps me going is that I did it, and that I want to make it a success story because I changed my whole life. I changed my whole life.
Well, and I think I told you too that I had come from Salt Lake City about 4 years ago because my husband is from Coeur d'Alene. So we have similar journeys. I mean, we were coming from different directions, but ultimately you just start to realize, and I mean, you've got 3 children. I have a 1-year-old now. So at some point, something in you shifts like that. that vision for your life that you kind of, that we all have planted in us from a young age in the United States, is success looks a certain way for the most part, right? Which is quite often corporate and in front of a computer, and it works. It does fulfill us for a while until something shifts. And I think quite often for women, it can be kids or whatever it is. It can be lots of things, but it's suddenly like, what's the next chapter? Like, this doesn't have to be the rest of my life. And then the pieces start to fall in, and the next thing you know, you're in Post Falls, Idaho with a farm, and I love it.
And I wouldn't have done it if I was, younger, which is just like you're saying, it's like every chapter is there for the time that it's there for, because that's the way that it's supposed to be.
Right.
And, I'm sad sometimes that my body is older. I'm 40 years old and I started this, at 39. So 38. So no, not even, I mean, how old am I? Yeah. So, it's a lot, it's a grueling job,
Right.
physically. So
Yeah.
I wish that in that sense that I was younger or stronger, but I wouldn't have been as inspired by the journey if I was younger, because I think I would have taken more for granted.
Yeah. And that's such a good point, because I think when we say we're moving into our passions, into our dream life, it's not to say that there isn't challenges and a lot of hard work. So I'm curious, because you do the Wednesday market in Coeur d'Alene. I got to see you yesterday. And then you do the Kootenai County Farmers Market on Saturdays. So what does your week kind of look like between prepping for those and farming? And I honestly have no idea what it takes to even be a flower farmer.
Sure. So, I mean, we are still very much in the learning part of well, I don't know that you ever get out of the learning part, or you shouldn't get out of the job, but we are still learning about what crops are selling, what flowers people like, what's easier to grow, really some flowers are harder to harvest than others, and they need to be cut a certain way to really be as prolific as they should be. But we're still learning about our soil and things like that. But we wake up when the sun comes up, and for the most part, I mean, we want the freshest product. So I don't cut flowers every single day, but I cut flowers most days. And my husband, I'm lucky enough to have a jack of all trades kind of husband, and he's really excelling in farm life because he has the opportunity to build a lot of stuff and solve a lot of problems. So he built me a cooler in one of our outbuildings here, which is really awesome because it just frees up a lot of flexibility when we do harvest something that is a little long, lasts a little bit longer, or we can store it in the cooler. So that's been really a game changer for us. So I don't harvest every day, like I said, but I do harvest almost every day. So I don't usually cut on Sundays. That's kind of my day off. Nice. But Monday we're, like I said, up with the sun.
Right.
And sometimes that's earlier, in spring the sun rises at 4:30. So we're up at 4:30.
Especially up here, right?
Yeah. Right now it's later, so it's 6:30. So we might get up a little bit and have some things in the house that we do before we go out in the field because it's dark. But I mean, usually we're out there by 6 o'clock. We're cutting flowers. Cutting flowers takes a lot longer than one would imagine. I can cut for 2 hours and it doesn't look like I did anything, but I have a full cart of flowers.
So what are you looking for when you even go out there? Because I mean, yesterday I was telling you about the zinnias that I bought from you last week.
Yes.
And I'm like, these are still gorgeous, Kendra. Like what? I mean, it's a full 7 days later. So, and you then started to kind of talk about what you look for when you pick them and whether the bees have gone to them and that. So will you talk about that just a little bit? I'm fascinated.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I definitely have mostly a love relationship with most of the insects that are out in my field. There's at least 5 different varieties of bees that come to our field. We have bumblebees and honeybees, mason bees, carpenter bee. I mean, it's cool. It's really cool. So, and it's especially good because we also grow pumpkins. So the more bees we have around, the better for the pumpkins. And yeah. So, but bees really like zinnias, and what I find, and a lot of what I found is, it probably could be refuted by somebody who's been doing this longer, but it would seem to me that when the bees start pollinating them, that it progresses their transition to want to seed. So I
Okay.
have to get out there and, what I'm trying to do is stop the plant from going to seed. So the more that I cut, the more it encourages blooms, because ultimately what that plant is trying to do is survive for the long haul. So it wants to grow seeds. So that if I cut the flowers, then it's perpetuating more flowers. So we just have to, I'm sorry, I have a little visitor that's coming to say hi.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh yeah, yes, yes. Oh, okay, we'll get him some water. That's very good, thank you. We have some new barn cats that my 4-year-old daughter is in charge of. She's the keeper of our kitties, Bill and Ted. Yes. So I'm sorry. So yeah, so the bee, so yeah, so there is sometimes you're racing against pollination because again, it just forces that process to start happening, because now the bees have pollinated, so they're like, yay, I've given my gift, and now I have to produce my seed and do it all over again, because nature's really awesome and it all runs in circles, which is really beautiful. So I just find that they really like those, so I try to get them as fresh. I leave some out there for them, because with zinnias, like the zinnia, it's just a really cool, it's just a cool flower that blooms in lots of different ways, depending on the seed variety. But I like to get out there when it's at its freshest, picked at its freshest. Zinnias don't particularly like to be in the cooler, so I keep those. And then aside from that, I put like a little bleach in the water, because they dirty the water. But and so I like to keep, the cleaner the water, the longer your flowers are going to last. So
I see. Okay.
we change the water often, just make sure that everything is fresh. But it's like anything, if you cook in the kitchen and you cook with love, then your food tastes better.
Yes.
If you're producing something that you love and that you're really mesmerized by, then and if you have that appreciation, then I think the love goes in. So I would say it's, well, and maybe I'm super lucky, I'm on well water here, so it really truly is a North Idaho product, from the water coming from the well to the blue sky to the sun. It's all really fresh. It doesn't go very far. I live in Post Falls. I go to 2 markets, so it hasn't had a journey before it gets to you. It hasn't,
right.
beyond that. So you're really getting a fresh product, and I'm really a stickler about that. I want you to be able to have flowers that last a long time.
Yeah, yeah. So on like a market day, so let's say like yesterday, the transition to get them from your farm down to the market into your booth, are you doing that by yourself? I know your husband's there sometimes, but obviously you have 3 kids to look after as well.
Yeah, so it's a constant juggle. So we are both full-time at home here on the farm. So we don't have other jobs or anything like that. So we are, again, just constantly juggling things. So I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And thankfully, they're really independent. The 4-year-old and the 6-year-old like to help more than the 9-year-old. The 9-year-old is a reader. He likes to read his books, and he has pollen allergies, so he likes to pull that cart a lot. So, we just do a lot of juggling. So, the market days, Wednesday is a little different than Saturday, since it's later in the day. I don't like to cut flowers in the heat of the day, so that's why we cut in the morning or in the evening. So I do cut flowers on Wednesday, but some flowers like a chill period, like dahlias especially, they like to be cut and they like to hang out. So I'll cut those at least 12 hours before they go to market. Those usually I'll put in mixed market bouquets, or just sell the straight by the stem. And then, that's just that flower. There's other flowers that have, just different necessities, but we start cutting early. And then, yes, hi, let me finish this, please. For a minute, sure. This is my daughter, Vivian, here.
Hi. Are you helping your mom?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Fun.
Well, why don't you go in? Will you do me a favor? Will you go in and see what Dad's doing for me? And then you can come back. So, we also have we want to do the branding thing. So everything gets wrapped in a sleeve. Everything gets, bunched and put into something that has the Winifred Farms logo on it. We wrap everything at the market so that it looks like it came from our booth, so that there's, that will hopefully we hope that resonates with people. I'm thankful for my time in the corporate world, because it did make me aware of certain things, and how there's quality control and detail, and attention to detail is really what separates you from other people. Even though I love all the other flower farmers, still want a product that's unique to you.
Right. Where did Winifred Flower Farms come from? Like the name Winifred? I meant to ask you that. Does that have a certain meaning to you? I mean, obviously it does.
Yep. Yeah, so it is my grandmother's name, my grandmother, so we named the farm after my paternal grandmother, Winifred.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah. And funny enough, not the farming side of my family, and not like somebody who inspired me with her like English garden or anything growing up. I don't have one of those flower stories, but I love getting those flower stories from the customers and the people who share their stories when they buy the flowers. That's a really fun aspect of it. Yeah. But it's intense. So, I mean, we get up early, and then, I don't really get a break on Wednesday at all. So Wednesday, it's like I wake up, I cut what we need to cut, I bunch, I wrap, I do the market bouquets, and then, we pack up and we get to the market by 3. And then my husband usually goes and sets up sort of the stuff, because, we have like fences and little, just to make it cute. And then I'll come with the flowers just to keep them, again, like as fresh as possible and stuff, so they're not out in the heat, because that's the hard part about Wednesday market. In the heat of the summer, it's right the heat of the day, and flowers don't like that. My booth is right in the sun. I mean, so it's a lot of trying to get people to recognize that we're there, because some of the farmers that have more seniority at the farmers market at the side of the street that's in the shade, so their flowers, I look at them and they're like, oh, and mine are like, I'm so hot.
You're so hard on yourself though, because I always look at your flowers and I'm like, look at that diversity from like everything that I buy. It's always beautiful, and like you said, so well branded. But I think it's interesting because, I mean, gosh, before, I feel like this year specifically, there's lots of flower farmers, and some people, it feels like even some of the veggie farmers have got flowers now too. But so there's been this transition. And of course, I am part of the farmers market world. I love that. I love going, yes. But a lot of people get their flowers from the grocery store. And I mean, I just think nobody knows where that's coming from. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like, what is the importance of really like knowing where your flowers are coming from? And what is a little bit of that story about if you're just going to the grocery store aimlessly, where are those even coming from?
And that is part of I guess the call to flowers, the call to local, or the call to farming in that way, is to just bring a sense of awareness to the fact that you should know where all of the stuff that you consume comes from. I mean, you should have an idea. I mean, you should know that, that the flowers that you're buying were grown in Ecuador, or, I mean, and because, I don't want to come off like, oh, rah, 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 you should do this, you should do that. I mean, you should do what you want, and you should buy what you think is pretty, and you should buy what brings you joy, and that's the sentence. But if you're looking for more awareness, or maybe you just want to know because you just didn't know before, I don't think that flowers should have a more extensive journey than the one that I told you. I mean, it should be cut, it should chill at the farmer's, and maybe it goes to a florist, and then but you should be buying it as fresh as and as seasonally as your food, as your produce. Because if you're buying something that doesn't grow here, then it's had a journey, and that journey could be questionable. I mean, how many flights has it been on? Where did it come from? How long has it been outside of water? What child picked this for a penny in a country that, I just don't know. And if you can't answer those questions, then maybe you should come to the farmer's market and buy fresh flowers, because you'll get the joy for longer. You get to support your community. You get to support farmers. When you support me, I support them. The money that I make in the farmer's market, I spend in the farmer's market.
Yeah.
So it's a perpetual, like, it's part of the same circle. If you're trying to run the circle of nature, or be part of that, like, you have to be the circle of commerce too, and be a part of it. And so it's just, again, when you spend your money locally, it stays locally, and that's a beautiful thing, to be a part of your community in that way. So
well, I think even like on an energy level, right? Like, I mean, I call myself a hippie on this, but I'm like, the energy that you're bringing into the home, like, if you don't know where if it's come from around the world, and if you can put it back into going to see you at the farmer's market or one of the other flower farmers, and have a conversation and make community, and put your dollar into keeping things real and local and helping the soils locally and helping the bees locally. Like, it's just
And it
such a
also
beautiful
helps you
cycle.
appreciate the seasons. You know, being somebody that's from California, you get really beautiful weather 100% of the time, but you don't get that season change. You know, I mean, again, I was 40 years old before I saw a tulip bloom up out of snow. I mean, that's a really beautiful thing. And I think that it makes summer more fun when you realize that's the only time that you get some of these flowers. That, I mean, that's what makes spring really special, because that's the only time you get those flowers. And so maybe we shouldn't be so indulgent to have flowers in January, because we should be putting our focus on something that is seasonally January.
Yeah.
Instead of looking for sunflowers in January, because that's not natural for here, for that. You can't force that to happen. And it's not about snow, it's about the daylight. You can't grow flowers when you have such short, I mean, I'm sure you could some, but you know, it's the light. We get those really long spring and summer, early summer, but winter, I mean, at 3 o'clock it's dark and I'm like, is it midnight? And you know, oh my God, where is everybody? Are they home? It's so dark.
Yeah. Well, like you said, even the smell of the flowers, like the smell of a flower that's come from healthy soil and versus one that's maybe been chemicalized or whatever they do to them, like to get them across the world. I mean, you said someone the other day said that they didn't realize a certain kind of flower even had a smell.
Exactly. I mean, and I know it was a carnation. Carnations have a beautiful smell, and the carnations that you get in the grocery store have lost that. They're just, you know, they're bred to last a really long time out of water in really, you know, subpar conditions for a flower. And so something's got to give. I mean, there's always a sacrifice when you push something to its limit. And so and I was shocked. I mean, I thought most people would have at least a little bit of an experience with a carnation. I think that just goes to show like how much the commercial flower industry has changed, just like anything as we've gotten more commercialized. Is that, you know, I mean, I remember I was raised Catholic, that there were these, you know, events centered around the Virgin Mary, and we would bring flowers and we would bring carnations, and I remember them being fragrant. So something has happened between the 80s and now where we're sacrificing even with that. And so, yeah, I was pretty shocked that somebody was so surprised that carnations had a smell.
Well, and I guess it's the same, because I have heard it from fruit and vegetables, and the nutrition isn't the same, and the smells and the aromas and the flavor profiles. I mean, it's progress in some ways, right? But in other ways, you're like coming back. And I think really probably part of why both of us were driven to come to a place where it's a little slower and we can put our fingers in the dirt and we can, you know, be outside and go for a hike. Like, that's what really brings it back to me just feeling grounded and connected to meaning of life, really, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can find you at the farmer's market, but then even you said you work a little bit even with events and others, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're growing flowers 7 days a week. We only have 2 markets. So, I mean, you have to grow a lot of flowers in order to sort of meet even the needs of those 2 days. But again, picking at the peak of freshness and all of that stuff, you know, we have more flowers than we're selling at the market. So we do, I mean, we're happy to sell to florists, to event designers. We have some existing relationships with people who are, you know, stylists and those kinds of things. So they're looking to, you know, practice with wedding bouquets or work on a sample for a bride. So, so there's that. We do grow. I mean, if I get enough notice from a bride and a bride is interested in specific flowers and we can grow them, I mean, we can grow special flowers for special events. And those are the kinds of avenues that we're looking really into, seeing how far we can push those relationships, because like for a professional florist who's buying flowers from a wholesaler, you know, those flowers aren't grown locally. And so again, they have that really long journey, and florists are used to what's called like shrinkage, where they only get to use a certain percentage of the product because the others has expired. So for florists, it's really beneficial to get local flowers because you reduce that shrinkage to really none. And so you get more bang for your buck. So happy to sell direct to florists.
Can we come visit your farm? Are you taking visitors?
I mean, on a case-by-case situation, yes. It was a pretty depressing day. You know, we had that huge windstorm, so not all of my plants survived well in the wind, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
And then it got really cold here. It was, you know, I'm out in the prairie, which is a great thing because, you know, I'm able to, we have a lot of little microclimates here in this area. So for me, I'm out on the prairie, I get full sun, you know, it's really, when it's great, it's great. But wind is a problem and it gets cold. When it's cold here. I don't have any trees or anything to like some of the more woodsy farmers do. So I lost some stuff to frost. It just got too cold. So I have this huge pumpkin patch and it looked, I mean, amazing 3 days ago. And now all the leaves are dying down and everything. I mean, I still got a really good crop of pumpkins because that's another one of our specialties. But we lost a lot. So that's been kind of rough. So, I mean, at this point, it's like farm tours. It's just not as pretty as I'd like it to be.
Right.
So if you want a real dose of farming, I would say, sure, you can come and look at the farm. But we try to make it look really good all the time on Instagram and everything.
Yay, social media, right?
Yeah. But there's definitely a side to it. Weeds. We're out, like I said, on the prairie, and this was pasture land before. So it's quite something to convert that to fertile growing ground. So, you know, everything is in process, but next season, you know, our eyes are to next season. So definitely next season, I would really love to have special events on the farm and tours and things like that, and have a farm pickup. We tried to organize that a little bit with, you know, some of the surrounding communities here, like Cocktail and some of these subdevelopments where we could do specialty farm pickups for those on a designated day in the week. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So yeah.
Yeah. So you bring up a great
point.
Perfect. Well, you bring up a great point. I mean, you're on Facebook. Your handle, I believe, is at Winifred Flower Farms.
Yes.
Right. Farm, singular. Yes. And then your website is winifredflowerfarm.com.
winifredflowerfarm.com.
Perfect. And I'll put these in the show notes as well. But finally, just kind of a wrapping up question. I mean, you moved out here for a different kind of life. I'm just curious, are there people or vibrant living ways, whatever that means to you? You know, for me, it's really mind, body, spirit, connecting with your purpose and just living in a way that feels good to you. Are there people or organizations out here that have really inspired you since you've been in Post Falls in this area?
You know, I mean, funny enough, you'd sort of sent me some of those questions and I started to think about, you know, what could I say? And my scope of experience is small here because we put so much emphasis on here. I really love all of the people that I've met at the farmers market. And I'm very inspired by the journey. So I'm right in the middle of Country Blessings Farm, which is a raw milk producer.
Okay. And
she's amazing. And that's, you know, what I'm very inspired by her. And then on the other side of me is the Idaho livestock, so beef sales. And he's a transplant, you know, from another place, just kind of taking over a ranching position, you know, in a new life. And so I'm very inspired by their journey and how they got here. But it's an odd one, and I don't know how it qualifies as much as vibrant living. And my daughter would like you to meet Ted. So.
Yes. Hi, Kitty. Beautiful.
Very good. You better take it back to the barn where you can be safe. But there is in Post Falls a little pie shop called Birdie's Pie Shop.
Okay.
And I'm very inspired by their journey to have this retail brick and mortar pie shop. And she has her place is named after her grandmother, so I feel in that way like a little bit of a kinship there. But there's just something about her business model and the way that she's really given to the community that is very impressive to me. And I think it's a good lesson to just stay big, stay just in a position where you can always try to thank people. And flowers and pie are a good way, I think, to show people that you care. And so I'm very inspired by that little shop for some reason.
I love that. No, I love that. And I think part of it is creativity and community and giving back and being humble and still just trying to show up as your best self. And like you said from at the beginning, like growing and learning. I have so many books, so I'm like, I'm going to learn this and this and this. And I think, yeah, just trying to figure out it all, right? So
Yeah, and
I love
keeping your
that.
mind open. So it's because you never know what little tiny thing is going to be that spark that sends you to take the risk in your life that maybe you didn't know you should take, but that you should take. So
Right.
you have to
Yeah, for
listen
sure.
to the little voices because sometimes it's like buttermilk that
Right.
is like the change of life thing where
Right.
highly encourage you to make fresh buttermilk pancakes once, and then you'll understand why pancakes are
I love it.
awesome.
Fabulous. Well, this was as great as I thought it would be, Kendra. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, like seeing
Yeah,
you at the
absolutely.
markets, getting your flowers, getting to know your story, meeting your cat and your
Yeah.
daughter, daughter than your cat, rather. So, I will wrap it up. And like I said, I'll add some comments to the show notes where people can find you. And then, but really, the farmers markets are the best place, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah.
Goodness, I just got off the call with Kendra. I need to start recording through the end of my Zoom meetings in general because such gems have been coming out when we kind of break down and we're like, oh, we're not on camera anymore. First of all, I forgot to show you my awesome flower shirt that I was wearing specifically for a flower farm day. But Kendra was just talking about she's always had from Native American tradition this inclination towards, I believe it was red-tailed hawks. And since she has moved to her farm in Post Falls, they circle, there's two of them that live in her area, and they circle around the farm. And it really means to release, symbolizes to release and let go and just focus on what matters. And she said, I mean, in these times now, she's about to homeschool her kids because of COVID. Um, I mean, but what does matter? Like having your fingers in the dirt, your kids' health, your health, um, that's it. And anyway, I just wanted to hop on and record this reflection after I got off the call with Kendra because it's just these nuggets. So I'm learning, we're growing. So anyway, that's it. Bye guys.